Hello guys, and welcome to a new Steel Division video today by me, Vulcan. Today I have for you Theoman 222 versus Herr Robert in the Community Patch Tournament. The map today is Colombelles, and on the Allied side, Theoman is using the 4th Armoured, and on the Axis side, Herr Robert is using the 2nd Panzer. So this is played on the Community Balance mod. Make sure to go check it out on the Steam Workshop. The guys on the SD League Discord would like help balancing it a bit more, so they are looking for as much help as they can get, so definitely go help out if you can. But for now, let's have a look at what's changed with these divisions. So the 4th Armoured I have talked about before, but we'll quickly go over again. Their costs have been increased, mainly. That the Bantam, Stuarts and Hellcats have all had their prices increased. But one big difference is that all of their rifle cards in Phase A have been removed. So they can only get infantry and half-tracks in Phase A, which makes their economy in Phase A a lot harder to work with than it was previously. Because what used to happen before was you had a bunch of rifles that were only 20 points, and then you spend the rest of it on things like M4 Abrams or the Hellcats, for example. And then you would be like, you'd still have that high infantry availability to support those at the same time. Whereas now you have to kind of sacrifice that extra bit of infantry availability in order to buy those more expensive units. And it does leave you vulnerable to things like a Ju-87 at the start from the first SS, for example, or something like that. A really strong like air start or maybe strong AT can really like rip up your armored start because there's no infantry to suppress the AT or like take control of those tree lines that you'd usually have a rifle squad sort of suicide towards. So yeah, it definitely slows down the playstyle of the 4th Armoured in the early game. Now for the 2nd Panzer, there have also been a few changes, mainly to their AA tab and their income. So their income has changed from 75, 150, 110 to 75, 140, 115 in each phase. So that basically means they have a little less extra power in Phase B, and it sort of carries over a bit more into Phase C. It doesn't seem to really change them too much, honestly. I still think they're going to be very powerful. But another part of the 2nd Panzer that has been nerfed is their AA and the power of their AA. So their Flak 38s have had a lot of their veterancy removed, and it means that like in the early game you can't just shoot down enemy fighters that are hanging about. So for example, with the 4th Armoured, I think they rely quite a bit on P38 Lightnings and the 2-star Gepards if they had like command next to them with the Flak 38s or Flak 38 20 mils, then you could probably shoot down a Lightning if it flew overhead. Whereas now you probably can't because the veterancy isn't high enough. So those 20 mils will just be missing that little bit more and allowing those aircraft to survive, which yeah, it basically stops the 2nd Panzer from being so dominant in all areas of their game. It leaves them a little bit more vulnerable to airstrikes, and also stops them from being so prevalent with their own aircraft, since they do get those Focke-Wulfs that are pretty strong. So yeah, that is all we have to talk about in terms of like the changes to divisions. Let's have a look at what the players are doing. So Theoman on the top side, he's going to be bringing in a Hellcat accompanied by an M3A1 half-track with the armoured LMG rifles. There's also going to be a command in there. Further down we see an M8 Cavalry going into the factory with a command squad and an M3A1 half-track with the armoured LMG rifles. And on the bottom side it's just going to be Abrams and a Jeep with a recon squad. So you can see there is only 2 infantry squads on the map at the start. Usually with 4th Armoured you'd see many, many more. Over on the side of Herr Robert, he has some infantry for the top side here. He's got the Speertrupp unloaded from the 251. There's going to be a Pack 40 unloaded on the main road by the 251-1. There's going to be Sturm Pioneers heading into the factory here with some command, and Panzer Grenadiers just taking a defensive stance outside of the town, well outside of the factory, sorry, in order to maybe attack any infantry that try and make some ground. Panzergren's also on the bottom side. Now I do find it kind of interesting that Herr Robert has put so much faith in these Panzergrens, because against the 4th Armoured, especially in the Community Balance mod, there is a lot of armoured vehicles, and these Panzergrens don't have Panzerfausts in the early game. So you're kind of lacking the AT to deal with units that are pushing in the early game. So for example, if Abrams just decided to drive down this road, Herr Robert would have literally nothing to stop it. He would have to invest in a Panzer IV or another Pak 40 in order to get the job done. Oh, nice shot there from the Pak 40. Does transmission damage the M8 cavalry. Does actually manage to find the kill with the second shot as well. That is devastating actually for Theoman, because it leaves his infantry exposed, as well as this M3A1 half-track. But as I mentioned before, lack of infantry AT is definitely something that the 2nd Panzer do have to deal with. So currently Herr Robert's waiting on the arrival of the Panzer IV to maybe clean up the M3A1, whilst the half-track here with the MG takes cover. This Pak 40 may also try and creep up in order to find the shot, but it's going to have to find a better angle, honestly. I am surprised that Herr Robert's actually going to end up leaving this here, if I'm completely honest. But lovely shot there from the Pak 40, kills the moving M3A1 half-track as the Panzer IV comes up the road. I would have expected him to maybe pick it up and move it into a position that could put more pressure onto the Hellcat potentially. But the WC-52 here, going to be forced to unload the cavalry scouts. Those cavalry scouts moving into the building. Now these cavalry scouts are actually pretty decent at close range. I mentioned this before. Having to rely on things like these armored LMG rifles in the early game in the half-tracks does make cavalry scouts a lot more desirable for close range engagements, where you used to previously use rifles. So that 10 HE at the 100 meter range is pretty nice. It's not going to be so useful against units like Sturmpioneers, but still, at least you have a little bit of firepower to take on enemy infantry. Focke-Wulf 190 does come in with a strafing run onto the Jeep. Due to this Focke-Wulf's lack of veterancy, the 50 cals from things like the M21 mortar carrier and the M4 Abrams is enough to do quite a bit actually to that aircraft. But M21 mortar carrier, I'm not really sure of the intention of this. I guess, yeah, it's to kill the Pak 40. But lack of veterancy may cause that to miss. Saying that, the first shot bang on target, very nice indeed. This is where a half track is needed to pick that up. But the second shot, that was a two-shot mortar from the M21. That is not something you see very often. When I'm using those things, they miss all day long, and the Pak 40 will come back and bite me with 1 health. That's always what happens. But in that case, that was very, very clean from Theoman, and definitely gives him a leg up to use this Hellcat in the early game to pick off things like these half-tracks where they were previously covered by the Pak 40. So this is a great opportunity for the Hellcat to do a lot of damage here. We'll have to be careful about the Panzer IV if the Panzer IV gets within the 100 meter range, but a Hellcat can reverse from that engagement very quickly, so it won't be too much of an issue. Sturmpioneers, they're going to try and make a push, and armored LMG rifles do plenty of damage. Oh, the Panzergrens there with the help of the Focke-Wulf 190 end up pinning down the rifles, and they are going to get pressed upon quite hard. Armored leader needs to stay in range, otherwise they may find themselves surrendered. WC-52 coming in with a 50 cal, going to be engaging the 251. Mortar carrier now going to be trying to help out as well. It's 50 cal engaging the Panzergrens whilst also mortaring these half tracks. Very nice indeed. Hellcat, is that engaging with its HE? No, it's engaging with its AP towards the half track here. Going to be taking that out. And this is something that Theoman is definitely going to be wanting to do. Break down the amount of half tracks that the 2nd Panzer has, because it can be one of the main problems that you come up against, especially since these half tracks do make the 2nd Panzer very mobile. So if it got to the point where, for example, on this bottom side Abrams died, the half-track could go pick up the Panzergrens and move them all the way far forwards, whereas with another division that doesn't use half-track so much, this Panzergren would have to run, and then there'd be plenty of time to sort of counteract that. And the Panzer IV, though, it's found a shot through onto the M21, and that is a lovely kill for Herr Robert to pick up after losing his Pak 40 to that mortar. The mortar does its job and then dies for it. That is pretty rough for Theoman. Like, having that support to take on things like these Stern Pioneers would have been lovely. But now we're going to be seeing a Ju-88S come in. That's going to be bombing the Hellcat, looking for the kill. Doesn't quite find it. These Ju-88Ss with the cluster munitions against an open-top vehicle like a Hellcat can be very effective, but in this case, doesn't quite do the job. Jeep 30 Cal going to be coming in. Speerthroop, they're going to be discovered. The Jeep 30 Cal is going to want to back off there quite quickly, since the Speerthroop can kill that with a grenade. Looks like the half-track's going to do the job. WC-52, that gets taken out. Hopefully that didn't have a cavalry scout in it, otherwise that would have been quite a waste, but I don't think it did, unless the other WC-52 already went down. But we see Abrams joined by a Bantam and now an M3A1 half-track on this bottom side. It's not going to be long until Theoman actually discovers that it's just a Panzergren here. And with it just being a Panzergren, what I mean is this doesn't have a Panzerfaust, so the Abrams can get very close, and the Bantam can do as well. So this will be cleaned up very quickly as soon as it is discovered. Oh, Abrams is engaging the Panzer IV, who is going to win. Panzer IV gets off a nice shot, and that's going to be a weapon jam. Nicely done from the Panzer IV. The Panzer IV with the 14 AP versus the 10 front armor is way more effective than the 11 AP versus the 8 front armor. So the Panzer IV does win out, and with Abrams having the weapon jammed, that does leave it very vulnerable to the Panzer IV pressing towards it. Half-track is going to be taken out though, and you can see that the Panzergrens, well, they're in trouble as well. They can be microed to the point where they can grenade this M3A1 right now, but we'll have to wait and see if Herr Robert decides to do so. The Bantam's pushing for that territory. He finds the +2. Theoman doing a great job there, discovering the breakthrough and the weak part of Herr Robert's lines. So if the Bantam can push its way all the way through to the spawn, it could cause a bunch of issues. But the Panzergrens decided not to jump back into the building. I think that's a missed opportunity there from Herr Robert. If he had decided to jump back in, not only would have the Panzergrens been able to pin down the armoured LMG rifles from range with the MG42, but also got the grenade onto the half-track in order to kill that off. But now this Bantam, it's getting the 50 cal onto this half-track, and there's potential here that the Bantam wins, and then the Bantam just cuts off the reinforcements. I think he's very close to doing so. Yeah, he's already cut off this land spawn. Very close to cutting off the second. Pak 40 has been brought in, but the armoured LMG rifles actually end up pinning that down. Wow, Herr Robert dropping the ball there slightly. These Panzergrens managed to kill off the armoured LMG rifles as well. Wow, so the M3A1 half-track is left on its own. Hellcat here is going to be taken out by the Panzer IV. This Panzer IV is doing work. It's taken out Abrams as well. 2 wonderful kills. Definitely keeps Herr Robert in the game after he lost a serious amount of territory down here. Just somehow has managed to clean it up. I think missed out on an opportunity for the play here, but otherwise Herr Robert's use of this Panzer IV has been perfect in order to take out the Abrams and the Hellcat. Yeah, really, really nice. Now with the strafing run onto the Bantam, it looks like the half-track should be able to surrender the Bantam. And that's going to get rid of a lot of this territory gain. Now the Focke-Wulf coming in with a strafe onto the M3A1 will allow the half-track to do that again. And that recovers a lot of this ground that Theoman did take from Herr Robert. The Pak 40 is going to remain alive. The armoured energy rifles were taken out on the top side. But we're now moving into Phase B, where both players get a serious upgrade to their economy. Theoman's jumping from 80 points to 130 points, and Herr Robert's jumping from 75 to 140. Now, I would not be surprised to see a lot more Panzer IVs coming in from Herr Robert. They are very cost efficient in this phase. For example, Ramsch here is 140 points, and he's getting 140 points per minute. So, in that case, like the income change from the Balance mod doesn't affect things too much, since he can still buy in a Panzer IV-H per minute, which is pretty nice. And this will definitely allow him to make more ground back on this bottom side. The only thing that I would say is that he can't allow the +1 to sit forever. Otherwise, it will get to a point where Theoman can reinforce himself and set up a lot of ambushes with these M18 Hellcats to make it very difficult to find ground back. So yeah, Herr Robert does definitely need to get a move on and make sure that he's pressing in the phase that suits his division. So, for example, phase B in this case. Sturm Pioneers, they're going to be forcing those armored LMG rifles out of the building there. Burning that out. The rifles, though, if they come into the building next to the Sturm Pioneers won't actually be able to use their flamethrowers. So that would be one way to get rid of that infantry squad and maybe start putting pressure onto the half-tracks behind the factory, since you would be able to see what is there with the infantry on the edge. Oh, Pack 40. Can it find a shot and kill onto the M18 Hellcat? It can. These Pack 40s have been absolutely crucial. The initial one in the center just held back like the majority of Theoman's units at the start of the game. And this one now sniping that M18 is really, really nice. Now he's got to deal with the M12 GMC though, and that's going to certainly pack a punch. A 29 HE power artillery unit. It's going to be slamming into the Pack 40. Will need to be microed correctly as the Pack 40 continues to move forwards, but look at this bad boy. Here comes the Ju-88. A very nice bombing strike. Kills off the M8 cavalry there, which was going to maybe deal with the Panzer II and these half-tracks. Now the half-tracks remain alive. The Sturm Pioneers were taken out, but the Panzer II has been brought in with off-map. And that 20mm cannon is not something you really want to put your infantry in line of sight of. The Panzer IV is going to be taking out this half-track on the bottom side. We just saw that. Now Ramsch, alongside this infantry, should be continuing to push here. We're seeing off-map come in from Herr Robert, and he's going to be pressing into that off-map with the Sturm Grenadiers. Sturm Grenadiers really good at this kind of fighting, especially when your opponent doesn't have any flamethrowers to deal with. So this factory is looking to be soon in the hands of Herr Robert. A nice off-map strike onto this part of the factory would be fantastic. Unfortunately, we can't see the incoming off-map strikes due to this being played on a mod, and the replay viewer is a bit funny with that. So, yeah, bear with me on that, but we'll see where the off-map comes in regardless, because units will be getting pinned down. Pack 40 actually manages to kill off that infantry there, but we're seeing on this bottom side Hellcat and a Stuart engage the Panzer IV. Focke-Wulf 190 coming in with a strafing run, but it's not going to be enough to stop the track will destroy onto the Panzer IV, and with that being forced to fall back, Panzergrenadiere are forced to smoke it off in order to save its life. Now there's no support, or no supply, sorry, on the field just yet, so this Panzer IV is in a pretty tricky spot and will need to be continued to be smoked in order to stay alive. Now the Sturm Grenadiers, they survive just from one of the HE grenades, but they do take a lot of damage. Half-tracks move up to try and prevent these engineers from finding any more kills. I feel like there was maybe a little bit of a mistake there from Herr Robert, allowing those to get hit by the grenade, but he is going to have more of those available. Now that he's in phase B, you can see his infantry availability is just going to be insane, like having as many Sturm Grenadiers as he needs. But you can see the build-up of Theoman's forces, especially with the M5A1s, and due to this Panzer IV kind of being out of action right now, these Stuarts can do a lot of work through this factory, as long as they're kind of covered against things like the Sturm Grenadier. Saying that, the Panzer IV has recovered its morale, so there's a good chance it's going to hit the mark. The Hellcat's actually just out of range, so a missed opportunity for Theoman to stop that Stuart kill from occurring. Because this is a 1,200 meter range engagement, there is literally nothing that the Panzer IV can do about it. So the Panzergrenadiere are going to have to throw another smoke grenade to stop it. Here comes the off-map into the factory. Sturmgrenadier is going to make a move once again, but these engineers were on return fire. Snipe the Sturmgrenadiers as they come across the open. This Panzer IV finding shots towards the centre of the factory. Does have line of sight onto the Stuart. Oh, that was just shy of getting a hit there. If the Panzer IV had taken out the second M5A1, that would have been very costly for Theoman. These are 75 points apiece, and he has already lost one. Now we're also seeing a Jagdpanzer come in, though, on the very top side from Herr Robert. Going to be using that to prevent the use of Hellcats at range. Hellcats really do struggle to kill Jagdpanzers due to the 14 front armor, just like they struggle to kill Panther Gs. But the great thing about Jagdpanzers is they cost significantly less than a Panther G, a whole 90 points less, which is quite significant. Sturmgrenadiers going to be taken out on a half-track there and now engaging the armoured rifles with the help of the machine guns from the M5A1 though and the M8 cavalry. The Sturmgrenadiers will be struggling a little bit, going to be using a smoke grenade to just stop that fire for the time being. I'm surprised though that Herr Robert hasn't continued to push back on the bottom side. He's very, very focused on this factory and playing around the factory, and that is working into Theoman's hands. Theoman does have the lead at the moment with the 569 points to 0. So yeah, Herr Robert's the one that needs to make a move. And I mean, there is a lot of potential for him to win this still, no doubt, because he is building up his forces slowly but surely. But if he lets this continue, like I've already mentioned how Hellcats can cause a real problem when it comes to like pushing. Because they can just hide on the edge of tree lines, pop out, fire, and then reverse in before your unit normally has even a chance to fire. It's very obnoxious. So, yeah, Herr Robert's got to bear that in mind. We are seeing, though, that the Panzer IV, it's still smoked off. Though he's using the angles on his Panzer IV to shoot into the centre of the factory whilst keeping it covered on the train line, which is just so smart. Because he still hasn't bought in a supply truck to finish things off either. Now, since the engineers have used both of their grenades each, the half-tracks are free to put on a lot of pressure here. And that's exactly what Herr Robert is doing. But the M5A1 could cause issues if there's not a unit to prevent it from just starting to attack these half-tracks and the Panzer II and so on. Because the Panzer IV has the limited line of sight since its track wheel destroyed. So you can see here, the M5A1 is going to come round, and this is pretty much a turkey shoot. There goes one half-track. It's going to reload. It's going to take out the next one, and so on. And this is going to be really bad for Herr Robert because he's been doing such a good job of keeping these alive, and now he's like losing them quite easily. He does manage to smoke them off though. Nice play with the Sturmgrenadiers. Like the use of smoke from Herr Robert has been spot on, absolutely spot on. WC-52 going to be taken out. It's going to actually pin down the cavalry scouts in line of sight of the Panzer IV. Another smoke shot comes down from the 251-2 to prevent it from being hit by the Hellcat. The Hellcat, though, I think just needs to move a little bit and then might be able to sneak line of sight. I mean, there is... I believe there was a shot through the factory at some point, but it looks like that smoke does cover it. Ramsch now coming up to the factory as well. Second Panzer II. I am incredibly surprised that Herr Robert has decided to focus on the town in this game. Now the M5A1 getting a bit over-ambitious there, bumps into two Panzer IVs, Ramsch and this Panzer IV-H. What an absolute hero this one has been. Incredible. So much value from it, considering it did get track wheel destroyed. Like, that is just not something you see very often. Herr Robert does briefly get the +1. And with a +1, he will win in 20 minutes. But yeah, I'm extremely surprised to see this tactic from Herr Robert. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It will lead to a point where he has built up an awful lot. And with that being the case, as soon as he does break through the factory, he will most definitely win the game. Like, if he manages to break through. So there is that. But I feel like working around something like this Jagdpanzer on the top side would be a much better choice, especially with like Sturmgrenadiers in this terrain. Would allow your Jagdpanzer quite a lot of freedom against things like the Hellcats. Now we are seeing two 88s being brought in. wow, quite the investment. Going to be covering the center of the map. Maybe allows things like these Panzer Grenadiers to make a push, and also these half-tracks that are holding the line. But Sturm Grenadiers have managed to get in here with the help of the off-map, and will be probably continuing to press towards the other side of the factory soon enough. Theoman now bringing in some rifles, but his infantry across the board has been pretty lackluster so far. He did manage to get the better of the units in the factory early on, but I think that's mainly because the Panzer Grenadiers and lack of infantry that the 2nd Panzer had was the main issue. So smoke covering this Panzer IV is going to stop it from taking a shot at the M8 cavalry as it retreats, but it might not stop this Panzer IV from making a move. This would be a really good time actually for Herr Robert to put on a bit more aggression towards the factory. On this top side, Jagdpanzer taking shots at the M5 gun. Good opportunity actually for the Hellcat to pop out and take a shot at close range, since every time this Jagdpanzer reloads, it's got a very long reload time compared to the M18 aim time. So the M18 could just time that right and pop out, kill the Jagdpanzer, open up the top side, and really give Theoman a chance in the late game. At the moment, it really looks like Herr Robert's building up to bursting point, where he's eventually just going to break through, and there will be nothing left that Theoman can do. Theoman's really got to start picking off these Panzer IVs, and losing Hellcats like that is not the way to do it. One thing that Theoman has actually been doing is losing these Hellcats quite easily throughout the game. But with the advance of the Spähtrupp, he is actually going to find the Hellcat, and the Jagdpanzer is loaded. So this could be really bad news for Theoman. He's like missed the opportunity almost to take out the Jagdpanzer. He's still going to be going for it, but the Jagdpanzer is going to be aiming at roughly the same speed. And now the Hellcat's in trouble. Yeah, does manage to get the shot off first. Hellcat hadn't fired yet, but is now under pressure from that initial shot, and the Jagdpanzer is going to get the kill. Yeah, a massively missed opportunity. Now the Ju-88 going to be coming in to clean up the M5 gun. M5 gun in the meantime will struggle to destroy the Jagdpanzer from the front armor. But great job there. Really just breaking down these units, and Herr Robert's basically leading up to a point where he's going to have a really clean KD. He's just played the game very slowly and methodically, way more than I really expected. Double 88 in the mid, it's just, I believe they just attack moving forwards. Now they're going to be joined by a Panther A, and this is where things get incredibly difficult. Since we're in Phase C, and Herr Robert has been able to save for a Panther A, things like these Hellcats really become very ineffective, especially since there are not enough left on the map at this point in order to make a difference. Like usually, with the 4th Armoured, you get to a point where you have like a lot of Hellcats, and that's where you can really shine. But since the Hellcats have been killed off one by one, there aren't enough of them to cause the ambushes that you need in order to wipe out things like the Panther A. And with that, well, it looks like the Panther A was spotted. Theoman's had enough. 24 minutes and 6 seconds it takes for Herr Robert to secure the victory. And I mentioned the clean KD, and you can see it right there, 1,975 kills to 540 losses. Really sort of big disparity of units at the end was telling of that. The number of Panzer IVs that remained alive, the absolute champion that was track wheel destroyed, covered by smoke for like the entire match, managed to find so many kills, it's just ludicrous. Let's have a look at the kills anyway. So these are the kills for Theoman. The Hellcat there, not really doing too much. Killed off a half-track in the Spähtrupp. Like that is, what, 45 points? Then we got the M21. This was just so clean. I've never seen an M21 hit so clean since I've started playing Steel Division. 2 mortar shots, one after the other from an unvetted M21, kills the Pak 40. Very nice. This M12 did manage to clean up the second Pak 40 in the end, which was a good thing to do. This M12, like just having one of those is really useful for cleaning up these pesky AT guns, especially since they are so damn powerful. Like the Pak 40s can just cause so many issues. But the Hellcats, you can see they just weren't paying themselves off very well. Engineers did manage to like clean up Sturm Pioneers, and this engineer took out 2 Sturm Grenadiers, which is very nice. So the infantry play in the factory was great, but Herr Robert really played into Theoman when it came to that, and I felt like Herr Robert always had the advantage, just kind of was playing very slowly. Pack 40 though, that took out M8 Cavalry and M3A1, and then we see this Panzer IV. What an absolute champion. This was the Panzer IV that was track wheel damaged. It took out Abrams and the Hellcat initially. It got the snipe through the factory onto the M21, forgot about that. And then it took out both of the M5A1s that were pressing through the factory, as well as half tracks and some infantry thrown in. That is just absolute MVP. This is the second Pack 40, found a snipe onto the Hellcat, instantly pays itself off with that kill. This Ju-88, nicely used to kill off the M8 Cavalry and the M5 gun. Unlucky actually to find the kill, like it didn't find the kill initially onto the Hellcat when I kind of expected it would. This Jagdpanzer though, this was a chance for Theoman to maybe take some control of the top side. If he'd killed the Jagdpanzer, that might have left enough of a gap to make a little play and get some flanks onto incoming units like that Panther A. But with the Jagdpanzer still being there, that Panther A would have been almost impossible to deal with. It would have been really, really rough. And then just some kills in the late game. That off-map coming in from the Panzer II allowed Herr Robert to seize the factory. There you have it. The 4th Armoured getting absolutely crushed by the 2nd Panzer. It seemed as though Theoman's lack of infantry availability definitely affected the way that he could play in the early game. So it looks like the balance sort of nerfing the 4th Armoured is definitely quite severe. Maybe, though, the 2nd Panzer definitely needs tuning a bit more, like in my opinion. But either way, if you guys would like to get involved, make sure to check out the mod on the Steam Workshop, the Community Balance mod, and go to the Steel Division League Discord, where they discuss a lot of the changes and balances, or like potential balances in the game. But that's it. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.